you ever wonder why we're in Syria? Robert Kennedy says, while the compliant American press parrots the narrative that our military support for the Syrian insurgency is purely humanitarian, many Syrians see the present crisis as just another proxy war over pipelines and geopolitics. What? A pipeline? It was when Qatar proposed to construct a $10 billion 1,500-kilometer pipeline through Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Syria, and Turkey. Saudi Arabia and Iran, they have the largest natural gas deposit in the world, and so Qatar wants to take it through Jordan. See, we go Saudi Arabia, Jordan, through Syria, through Turkey. So they're on board. Jordan's on board. Turkey's on board. Guess who's not on board? Syria. And there's the problem. Of course, the Russians, who sell 70% of their gas exports to Europe, viewed the Qatar-Turkey pipeline as an existential threat. In 2009, Assad announced that he would refuse to sign the agreement to allow the pipeline to run through Syria to protect the interests of our Russian ally. What happened then when he tells the United States and Saudi Arabia that I'm not going to let you have your pipeline? What do you think happened? Well, at that very moment that Assad rejected the pipeline, military and intelligence planners quickly arrived at a consensus that fomenting a Sunni uprising in Syria would be a good thing. At that very moment, they decided to, hey, let's overthrow this guy.
Just to say, on my own previous trips to Syria, the most difficult thing is to come back to the United States with a message on the role of the U.S. war and the way in which the United States has instigated through many criminal alliances this war on Syria, this effort to completely destroy Syria.
I think at this point most people understand that it is not the civil war that we are being told in the media. It is a proxy war. There are foreigners and people who are being paid and supported militarily, financially, to create the discourse and the suffering that we have been seeing in Aleppo and other places.
People need to understand that the war in Syria was not a domestic uprising. This was not some Arab Spring where you had some democracy seekers with flowers in their hair seeking to bring about some wonderful utopia. These were hardcore jihadists led by the Muslim Brotherhood with support from CIA, from MI6, and with help from the Saudi Arabians and the Turks.
Are you really suggesting that the U.S. government is funding these terrorist groups?
I'm not only suggesting it. This is the reality that we're living in. And
not directly,
most
though.
Americans, you know, if you or I were to go and provide money, weapons, or support or whatever to a group like Al Qaeda or ISIS, we would immediately be thrown in jail. However, the U.S. government has been providing money, weapons, intel assistance, and other types of support through the CIA directly to these groups that are working with and are affiliated with Al Qaeda and ISIS.
So you're saying the CIA is giving money to groups in Syria, and those groups are working with al-Nusra and ISIS?
There have been numerous reports from the New York Times to the Wall Street Journal and other news outlets who have declared that these rebel groups have formed these battlefield alliances with Al Qaeda, that essentially these Al Qaeda groups are in charge of every single rebel group on the ground fighting in Syria to overthrow the Syrian government.
Doesn't the Secretary's assessment that these groups are subgroups of designated terrorist organizations, including Al Qaeda in Syria, which is al-Nusra, doesn't that warrant some change of policy? Or do you think that as long as these terrorist subgroups call themselves differently, they're off the hook?
I think, you know, I've spoken to this before. I'll say much the same as I've said before, which is that we recognize that, you know, in places like Aleppo and elsewhere, that there's a mixing or commingling, whatever you want to call it, and that we need to work more closely together to disentangle.
And people have been understanding for quite some time now that there are no moderates. these weapons, once they get over there, they wind up somewhere else. The moderate of today becomes the al-Nusra of tomorrow, and he takes his weapons with him. And plus, a lot of weapons were captured in Iraq, which have made their way into Syria. So you have American weapons coming from various sources, winding up in this conflict. And of course, more sophisticated weapons means that it will be harder and harder to resolve it.
Siria, un país que era tan próspero económicamente, un país que realmente no... La gente vivía muy bien y lo último que se esperaba era una guerra, y aun cuando ya veíamos lo que venía pasando en el mundo árabe con la mal llamada primavera árabe, ¿no? En Siria esto de ninguna manera se esperaba. Fueron estos levantamientos que, aun cuando eran difundidos por la prensa como manifestaciones pacíficas del pueblo sirio, buscando democracia, ¿no? Que eso es lo que se vendió, lo que se vende Occidente con esta primavera árabe, como se la llama. Sin embargo, esto no coincidía con la realidad que veíamos y que constatábamos día a día en estas manifestaciones, que ya eran actos terroristas y ya eran persecución abierta a los cristianos. De hecho, desde los primeros disturbios había extranjeros, árabes extranjeros, provocando estos disturbios, uniéndose, ¿no?, alimentando a estos grupos opositores al régimen, que eran grupos minoritarios, ¿no? Y ya con persecución abierta a los cristianos, como digo, ¿no? Y eran noticias de todos los días, cristianos descuartizados en bolsas de basura, en el contenedor, en la calle, con un cartel: no tocar, es cristiano. Y por eso el llamamiento contundente de la Iglesia, ¿no?, que ha alzado su voz desde el comienzo en este conflicto, denunciando el abastecimiento, el financiamiento de esta guerra, ¿no? Tanto el Papa Francisco como los obispos de Siria, de Irak, hablan fuertemente de esto, diciendo: basta de apoyar a los grupos terroristas, basta de vender armas, basta de vender armas a la oposición moderada, porque la oposición moderada no existe en Siria. Y pensemos qué fácil sería acabar con todo esto si se detuviera la venta de armas.
It was clear to us from the meetings that we had that most of the Syrian people support Assad. And in fact, in all of our meetings, we didn't come across anyone who wasn't in support of Assad. There were people who were maybe critical of some things, but not everyone is unified.
I would ask you to follow the voices of people in Syria who, like my colleagues here said, they want you to speak the truth. They're tired of lies. They're very well aware of the lies that our media is purporting and that our human rights groups are purporting.
No, but tell me what you think what is the lie that's being told? What do you think is not being
told? You lie because you are talking truth, not truth about the Syria.
So
Syria
what is
is
the
very
truth?
quiet.
What is
the truth? There's nothing we have in Syria. Syria is very quiet. And everybody in population in Syria loves our president, and we support the president. But you are talking the very lie about Syria.
Well, I didn't lie. It's my first day here.
No, you are lying, because everybody here, population, 23 million person from Syria, love Bashar Al Assad and support Bashar Al Assad.
But I'm not making it up. There are pictures of
No,
protests.
you are.
But there are pictures.
Your advertisement like that.
But if we see, yes,
No,
there are people like you who
you are
support.
liking, you are telling like that.
But
Everybody when BBC Arabic, he can hear the lie about Syria. Al Jazeera and Al Arabiya.
But maybe Syria is like any country. Some people support and some
No,
people
no,
don't
everybody
support.
has support.
So Syria is different.
There is very little people. Maybe 10,000 like that. But the most of people, 22 million, 23 million person support Bashar Al Assad.
But even
and we have not demonstration. We have armed gangs.
But even the president said there needs to be some change.
Yes.
He did say that.
Change.
Yes. He said there are some legitimate grievances.
He is always doing to make that change.
Yes.
He's trying always to make this change. So is it we support him? But you are telling the lie about the Syria. Now finish.
Mr. Bashar Assad for very, very good and very kill.
But you have to know,
very good, and I like
Cuando se producen estos primeros disturbios, la gente realmente se asusta y intenta manifestarse, sale a la calle, tanto en Damasco como en Alepo. Damasco, la capital del país, Alepo, la segunda ciudad, pero prácticamente más importante que la capital por su movimiento económico. Sale la gente, de miles de personas a la calle, para mostrar su apoyo al presidente. Fíjense, una cosa extraña y difícil de entender, ¿no? Porque ellos viven bajo dictadura. Pero sin embargo son años viviendo así, es el modo de gobierno que les ha funcionado y quizás a nuestro modo occidental es difícil de entender e incluso nos equivocamos al juzgarlos con nuestros criterios occidentales y pensar que la democracia puede funcionar para todo el mundo, ¿no? Estos pueblos se han manejado así, hasta el momento estaban muy bien y ciertamente no es que estaban añorando, ¿no?, los sirios, por ejemplo en Alepo, ¿no?, envidiando las democracias o pseudo-democracias occidentales, para nada, vivían realmente muy bien. Y en ese sentido por eso se manifestaron, para mostrar que ellos preferían seguir como estaban, antes de terminar en manos del fundamentalismo islámico, que ya lo veían venir. Es decir, para ellos es como elegir el mal menor. Cuando se producen estas manifestaciones, las caravanas de gente, de miles de personas en la calle, lo que veíamos por las ventanas del obispado donde estamos, donde vivimos, lo veíamos también por televisión. Y las mismas imágenes eran comentadas de esta manera: continúan las manifestaciones pacíficas del pueblo sirio, que sale a la calle pidiéndole a su presidente que se vaya. Es decir, lo contrario de lo que estaban intentando expresar. Y ciertamente es uno de los grandes dolores de este pueblo, ¿no? Un gran sufrimiento, a la par de la guerra y la persecución que están viviendo, es esta gran mentira montada alrededor de esta guerra, ¿no? Es el abandono de Occidente, es el silencio cómplice de Occidente, como lo llama el Papa Francisco, porque en realidad esta guerra en Siria tiene poco y nada de guerra civil y en realidad fue algo armado y programado desde afuera con fines económicos, incluso hasta manipulando a estos grupos fundamentalistas, ¿no?, que aun cuando buscan acabar con los infieles, es decir, con los cristianos, ¿no?, y derribar el gobierno, en definitiva, en el fondo, lo que se persiguen son fines económicos y nadie en realidad está pensando en el pueblo.